Good day, valued visitors. Travis here with a news update. Marvel's Spider-Man expansion is not, repeat, not coming to MTG Arena. I waited a couple of days to talk about this because I wanted Wizards of the Coast to volunteer some more details. But what I want to do here in this public service announcement for Magic, that's right, folks, Tpull's Corner is now the unpaid arm of public relations for our Wizards of the Coast. I'm kidding. Please, nobody misconstrue. I am not acting in an official capacity with anyone, okay? But I want to dismiss one piece of speculation out there involving the rights of the license, and I'll do that up front, and then I'll talk later about some of the history behind this, how licensing has traditionally worked, maybe what I might have done differently, and also about how this may end up a better deal for some of the player base, especially if you're an online-only player for now, as I am. The main thing to know is that Wizards made a very terse one-sentence announcement a couple days ago that Spider-Man would not be coming to Arena. It would only be printed in hard copy. They've come out since then with a little more detail to discuss their online set releases. It's going to be called Through the Omen Pass. So let's pull that over right now and just show you. They will be digital sets that are set within versions of Universes Beyond sets that otherwise wouldn't be coming to digital Magic platforms. These digital cards will be mechanically identical to the Universes Beyond tabletop counterparts, but with unique creative treatments, different art, and different names. So they're not going to do this for every Universes Beyond set. They're only going to do that for the things that can't come to Arena. So there's Wizards of the Coast has sort of bounced around like a yo-yo on how they're going to treat Universes Beyond sets. Originally, they said this is just a fun thing we're doing on the side. The product may be for you, but you can ignore it if you want to. You don't have to pay attention to it. It's not like anyway. And it sold so well, they changed their opinion because the main people coming in through the Universes Beyond set were new players. And they thought the new players, if they're not being able to be standard legal, they're being dumped into the more difficult and the higher power level area of tournament play and stuff like that. So they felt like they were throwing new players into the deep end of the water. And it's very important for them to grow their player base. And I think we all understand that. So they decided, okay, let's make it easier for the new players. Let's give them a better venue in which to receive an introduction to the game when, say, Final Fantasy comes out. The timeless format, right? It'll just be standard. It'll be a little bit less intimidating. So things have changed quite a bit on how they were going to handle reprinting these cards. Originally, they were going to take anything that was mechanically unique from Secret Lairs, and they were going to make a within-universe equivalent. And then the things that they used to keep track of that, like the list, they stopped those. So it's been really whiplashy kind of experience. But obviously, for Spider-Man, Wizards of the Coast was not able to come to terms with Marvel, or possibly the parent company Disney, in terms of securing digital rights for the trading card game in perpetuity. They were able to do so for the other expansions, so Lord of the Rings will always be on Arena. So will the upcoming Universes Beyond expansions Final Fantasy and Avatar, which is the UUB in the lower right. You know that's Avatar. For whatever reason, they didn't get the digital rights for Marvel, not in a way that will allow the player base to keep those cards and use them forever. So here's one of the big pieces of speculation that's incorrect. Some people have been suggesting that Sony has thrown a wrench in the works because they hold certain rights, but that's not true. Sony holds film rights only for the Spider-Man universe part of Marvel. Marvel retains all of the digital rights associated with Spider-Man. However, Marvel's history with Sony may have had an impact on how this deal with Wizards turned out the way it is, and I'll cover the history of that and how it may have affected things. But first, we'll get into some speculations ourselves of why things might be. And if you're wondering about how I know some of these things, I'll give you a little of my background at the end just for those that are curious. The curious thing with this timeline is the timeline here, they'll look at 2025 for the set releases for the year. We were given this a long time ago, months ago. No mention was made to Arena back then, which is a very big fact to withhold. It could simply be that the plan for Through the Omen Pass was not finalized yet, so they wanted to wait until everything was concrete internally within the company. However, it might also be that the negotiations for the physical card product for Spider-Man were completed early in the process, and that negotiations for the digital rights were still ongoing. And Wizards of the Coast was hopeful that a successful deal could be made still. And only at this point, when it was clear that they could not come to terms, did they have to reluctantly accept that they were not getting what they needed. And what they need for Arena Online is for the cards to be available in perpetuity. Okay, we're not going to spend gold or buy money to get golden gems and turn those golden gems into cards if those cards are going to disappear. It's just not doable. Now, the other possible reason that Marvel maybe didn't want competition in the online collectible card game space is with their own product, Marvel Snap. Marvel Snap is an awesome game. I play both Magic and Snap. The game is making a lot of money, and it's a digital first game, so it was specifically designed for mobile first, unlike Magic the Gathering. Magic started out as a physical card game and became digital. I think this is a possibility, but a low one for this reason. Marvel has a number of other Marvel games out, and they've been running for years, and they are all also licenses, meaning a company has paid Marvel for the license to use the Marvel characters. Marvel already has all the money they're going to get from Marvel Snap in the sense that whenever that license has to be renewed, the companies behind Marvel Snap will pay to Marvel each time for those rights. So they've got a set contract. They've got a license to use those Marvel characters for so many years. That contract will probably expire at some point. But if Marvel Snap is making money, and Marvel can make money off of a license renewal, Marvel will probably be willing to renew that license and keep the game going. But the money from the game, that goes to a company called Second Dinner and other investors with only a license fee going to Marvel. So it's not Marvel's specific, it's not Marvel's game. It's somebody else, some other company's game. They've paid to use the Marvel license. So Marvel doesn't necessarily have a dog in the fight with this. It would be nice to obtain an official statement from some company somewhere to confirm these things. So I suppose it is a remote possibility this could be a factor in the case, but there are multiple long-running mobile Marvel games like Strike Force, Marvel Champions, and others. So Marvel doesn't really care how many computer games are out there, how many mobile games are out there that have Marvel characters competing with each other. That's their business, because Marvel's already been paid all that money in license fees. So this is the big history of comic book companies. They make a little bit of money publishing comic books, but the big money has always been in merchandise and licensing. For example, in 1989, when Batman movie came out, DC Comics and parent company Warner Brothers, they made more money off of selling t-shirt licenses for Batman than they ever have selling Batman comic books. And Marvel's been the same way. And this is where the history of Sony comes in, and why when we talk about online arena, we need the digital rights in perpetuity. That phrase is key, in perpetuity, and it may be a sore spot for Marvel Comics. So let's go back in the Wayback Machine, right before Marvel Studios existed, because we're kind of in this roller coaster of Marvel product not being so good lately the last few years. But when they started with the first Iron Man movie, they launched this 20-year. It was completely awesome. They took over Hollywood. They introduced the superhero as a concept for movies that is crowded out a lot of other movie type subjects as well. Some filmmakers do not like the fact that superheroes rule the roost. But for a 20-year period, Marvel just ruled. And we're kind of on a downswing downturn from that right now. But before that, before Marvel Studios existed, Marvel Comics was actually going in bankruptcy. And they came out of bankruptcy with the idea to tell their own stories on the big screen. Before that, they sold movie licenses, film rights. So the Blade trilogy, they sold the Blade rights as a film license. The X-Men, it was sold as a license. The Sony Spider-Man license, this was a problem. How do I want to put this? Somebody did not read on Marvel's side. They did not read the contract properly. When you're negotiating back in the day, they probably negotiate for one major movie with the option to do a sequel and most likely to do a trilogy, to do 3 movies. And those, because you'd have things like the original Star Wars trilogy turned out to set a pattern. You had the Back to the Future trilogy. It was advantageous to have these in the contracts as 3 movie deals, because if the first movie was successful, you could exercise that option for the 2 sequels, and you would do like they did with Back to the Future, and they would film the 2 sequels back to back to save on production costs. Significant money savings, and very worthwhile to do that. Here's the problem. Usually when you're negotiating with an intellectual property for a 3 movie deal, it's set to expire. There's a limit on things. And there was a certain phrase missing from the contract that Marvel signed with Sony, where Sony basically had the wording that every couple of years they had to produce a movie set in that Spider-Man universe in order to retain the rights. There was no date by which the movie rights would expire. And most people do that sort of thing for so what happened was Sony made a Spider-Man movie, and it was great, and they exercised their option to continue making sequels. And a couple of years later, they put out Spider-Man 2, and a couple of years later, they put out Spider-Man 3. And guess what? They kept on putting out Spider-Man movies. So there is a date restriction within the contract that they have to put out. They have to produce a movie and put it in theaters within a certain time frame. So it gives them enough production time to make the actual movie. They have a couple of, I forget if it's 2 or 3 years, but they have years to put out the next movie. The stipulation within the contract, the wording of it was, if you put out another Spider-Man movie, then you have another few years in which to put out another Spider-Man related movie. And Sony's kind of used this as a loophole. They are always releasing a product, no matter how lousy, so that they can retain the film rights. So this is why no matter what Sony produces, it's in the Spider-Man universe, it's going to be released. And if you didn't like Madame Web, they don't care. If you didn't like Kraven, they don't care. Their point is they've got to put out something. And if they're not ready, and it results in a terrible movie, it doesn't matter to them so much because they think that the long-term value in retaining those film rights is worth putting out those lousy movies. It's worth the cost. Now, if it were you and me, we would probably spend more time and effort to make good movies and not just turn out schlock to retain the film rights. We would try and do both at the same time, right? We would try and put a little quality thing out and retain the film rights at the same time. So, but here's the thing. Sony's been able to manipulate this for more than 25 years. And that means that they get to keep making Spider-Man movies, and Marvel, which would love to have the license back and have all those characters available for their own movies, and especially for that shared universe concept, and have more crossovers with Spider-Man and other characters other than like the one special arrangement that Marvel and Sony came to the one time. That was a limited engagement itself. They're not likely to get it as long as Sony repeats that behavior. So this in perpetuity phrase is a real sore sticking point with Marvel Comics. And ostensibly the larger parent company, which includes Disney, which is pretty savvy as far as property rights go. So it is possible that Wizards of the Coast, when they approached Marvel Comics and said, we would like to do a Universes Beyond deal and put Marvel cards to Magic, that the idea of printing the cards was fine because that expansion is going to be in print for a set number of years. And those cards will still be good. Once that first sale has gone through to you, you can use those cards forever. It's not a problem. But unless they do a renegotiation at some point, Wizards' rights on that is going to run out. They're not going to be able to print a physical Spider-Man set again in the future past a certain date. Digital rights are different. For Online Arena, we need those cards forever. You give us a digital card. It's possible a lot of us paid real money to get to that point. And we don't like the idea of things just disappearing on us. So, yeah, you need to get those digital rights in perpetuity. So, still stung from their experience with Sony, and will never agree to anything in perpetuity again for their life. It's possible the other Marvel mobile games, they are renewable licenses. They're not in perpetuity. So as long as the game's around, they can use those characters. Arena's different, right? Magic the Gathering is different. These cards, once they're entered into the atmosphere, the environment, they need to be there. In perpetuity is not a emphasis on collectible, right? We need to be able to keep these things, even in the digital environment. So either Marvel just will not do that, period, or the price that they asked for that was so astronomically high that Wizard and or Hasbro, parent company of Wizards of the Coast, said, no, we can't do that. So regardless of how we got here, this is where they are. I suspect the most likely explanation is the two sides could not agree on a suitable amount of money, that it was just too rich for Wizards' blood, that they just couldn't do that. And, so here we are. Now, here's how it might end up better for us, at least on Arena, than we thought. The original bombshell of a statement was one sentence basically saying Marvel Spider-Man will not be coming to Arena. And it's understandable some people might be disappointed, might even be angry at that at first, but we looked at the teaser cards for Spider-Man. They were not good. Let's take the Dr. Octopus as an example. It's a bad design for it's a flavor fail is what we call it. It's a major flavor fail. You could design a Magic card like that would be fine. It's not Dr. Octopus. It doesn't fit his power set that nicely. Also, like, Spider-Man was not even the right color pie. They had him like I think else, and he's red and blue through and through, and we could have an entire video discussing color pie philosophies of superheroes and supervillains. That might be interesting, but they got his color scheme wrong. So color pie was wrong. Designs of the creatures were wrong. The whole Spider-Man expansion was a very big disappointment to me personally, because I grew up reading comic books. I learned to read from reading comic books. I'm a big fan of Marvel and DC, and I expected a lot more from this. And to look at those designs, I was feeling really bad. And it's not a case of the art, because they always find good artists. And so even if the particular pose might not have been to my liking, the artwork itself was pretty good. I had ideas on what I would do if I were in charge in terms of getting comic book artists to do some of the artwork for the Magic cards that I thought would have been phenomenal. And they're not doing that to a certain degree. They are to a little bit, but they're still going out to the regular stable of Magic artists for a lot of stuff. And I thought it would be interesting if they could break that for the Universe set a little bit. But, they're doing what they're doing. I'm not in charge. Whatever. But here's the thing. I'm kind of disappointed because Mark Rosewater is a big comic book fan. And people have been pulling up statements from him, like on his blog talk or whatever, from more than 10 years ago, talking about how they probably weren't going to do Universes Beyond because they tried other intellectual property before and it was a failure, that he didn't think it worked too well with the inset of Magic expansions, so on and so forth. So Rosewater himself was kind of souring on the idea. But something changed his mind. And it happened with Marvel. Somebody sat him down and showed him Marvel characters on Magic cards and said, this is the deal we're negotiating. And the idea of Mark Rosewater playing Marvel Magic cards, that changed his mind. Because he's a comic book fan like me. He grew up reading. He's not somebody who, slabs a comic and puts it up on his wall only as a decoration. He's not somebody who buys it just for the cover to admire and he doesn't read the story. I don't know what he does now. I don't know if he has any time because he's a busy man. But Mark Rosewater grew up reading comic books and loving those stories. He knows the characters. He likes the characters. Putting Marvel into Magic is going to be like crack to him. Okay? But he's the lead designer. He's lead designer on the major inset stuff. So the core. So he's doing design for Aether Drift, for Tarkir, for Edge of Eternities. Mark Rosewater is not involved with a lot of Magic products these days because there's too many, and he's only one guy. So they have different design leads for Final Fantasy and Avatar and Spider-Man. They're different people that are constructing these cards, not him. If he were more involved, I think, in the design of Marvel cards, I think they would have turned out a lot better because he's much more intimately familiar with those characters. So I think somebody showed him something that he really liked and kind of changed his opinion. So it's no longer valid to be mad at Universes Beyond and to say Mark Rosewater lied to you. He didn't lie to you. He was telling you the truth at the time. Somebody changed his mind. And he has changed his mind. And he's okay with Universes Beyond now because he thinks this is fun. And you know what? If you're a fan of that particular property, he's right. If you're a fan of Final Fantasy, you're really looking forward to the Final Fantasy expansion. If you love Avatar, and especially if you already played Magic, you're going gaga for this. You're just in Magic the Gathering. Same for him. his drug of choice, right? So Marvel crossing over with his company, it changed his mind on a permanent basis. He is always going to be supporting Universes Beyond. But although he tries to poke his head in meetings and keep an awareness of what they're doing so that he's not, so that the timeline, the development timeline is nice, right? He doesn't want to create Edge of Eternities as a mechanic and have it bump in or conflict with something, have tension with Spider-Man. So he knows what's being developed. He has a general idea. He knows how things are going. He knows the history of the project. But he's not sitting in on the everyday design and development type meetings and planning these cards. And the cards are really lacking. So not in terms of, if they were just regularly designed Magic cards, they might be okay. But in terms of Marvel cards, the flavor is terrible. So this is why things might turn out to be good if you're an online arena player only, okay? Dr. Octopus, we're not going to get Green Goblin, we're not going to get the Goblin Grenades. They're going to have different names. They're going to have the same mechanics so that there's no discontinuity between paper play and online play. But we are going to get in-universe equivalents of the Spider-Man set. So if the design of the Magic cards is decent, and I think the overall design is decent, I'm going to be a lot happier because I was not looking forward to playing with Spider-Man and Dr. Octopus as they were presented to us. Even the Secret Lair cards, Captain America, Black Panther, Storm, these are all cards that are coming in the future with X-Men expansion. And this is a multi-expansion deal with Marvel Comics that's going to take place over years. There's so many possible things you could do with Marvel Comics, and they're stable of thousands, literally thousands of characters. Not to mention legendary locations, legendary equipment, vehicles. There's so much potential there. I would have done it in a completely different of arena. Like, you would log in and you wouldn't go to play a regular standard game here with Magic and the other cards. You would just go into a Marvel only zone and play with Marvel cards. And that would have been lovely. I don't think we're ever going to get that, but that's what I would have done if I was king for a day. If you all want to hear more about that, I will do a separate video, and I will lay out my plan for what I would do if I was going to do a Marvel expansion with all the rights, and how I would set it up and what kinds of things I would do. It's an interesting thought concept. I would love to talk about it if you want to hear it, so just leave me a comment if you do. But I'm not going to waste more time on that here for this particular video. I want to, at this point, just kind of say there is a problem in this, in that the people who don't want to play with Spider-Man physically, who are like Vorthos people who are really heavy into the Magic the Gathering within universe, their only choices in print are going to be the Marvel Spider-Man set. So only Arena is going to get access to the digital cards that look more like the traditional Magic the Gathering cards. So there are some people that don't like Universes Beyond, that want to buy just regular Magic cards, and they want to just play the physical game, and they're not going to have what we have. Online, we're going to have not Spider-Man. We're going to have, let's say, Lord Arachnid will be the name of the character. Okay, I'm making that up. But we're going to get the Lord Arachnid expansion. We're going to play with all those cards, and there's going to be different art, and it's going to be more within the Magic universe type of setting. It's going to be more appropriate to that kind of look and feel. There are a lot of players that only play physical that don't really care for Arena, and they're not going to have that option. So no matter what, some of the player base is going to be angry at this decision. I don't know how avoidable it was, but there are people that are going to be like, so do I spend money to get Spider-Man cards and play with that because it's standard legal and I want to keep up, and if there's, especially if there's good tournament cards, I'll feel compelled to buy those. But I'm going to hate looking at them because I really wanted to be within universe. And they're just not going to have that choice. They're going to have to suck it up and just deal with having Spider-Man mixed in with all their other stuff, whether they liked it or not. I feel like we got, because for two reasons. One is I do prefer Magic to be more within universe, and we got more of that now. I think Final Fantasy and Avatar are maybe closer in spirit to Magic the Gathering, so those might be palatable to us. I'm hoping. But the way that the Spider-Man cards were designed, it's very jarring. It doesn't mix in with the rest of Magic, which is why I would set them up on a wholly separate, independent instance on the network. But they did such a bad job designing with the flavor. The flavor was not matching the Marvel characters. It just there was these little details and they're so off. And for somebody like me who's been involved with reading Marvel comics since I was 5, I know these characters. I know their back history. I know their power sets. I know their philosophies. It's very easy for me to spot the problems and to be irritated by them. So the fact that I'm not going to have to stare at this disgusting Dr. Octopus on my online screen when I'm playing Arena, that's a plus for me. You'll have to let me know if you've got a problem with it, if you would have preferred to have Spider-Man online. The very first thought, when I was first looking at all this, Spider-Man was the one possible bright light in all of the universes beyond, because I had like 2 jobs and going to college when Final Fantasy came out, so I skipped that. So I know of it, but I'm not vested in it. You know, I'm aware of Avatar. I've seen some Avatar. I'm not like a big fan of Avatar. It's not that I don't like it, but you know, I'm a fan of certain things. It's good. It's okay, but I'm not the world's biggest fan. But I think in sensibilities, it's closer to the Magic the Gathering aesthetic. But out of those 3, the thing I was looking forward to was Marvel fan. But as soon as I was looking at the cards, I'm like, oh, this is not what I want. This is not what I like. This is not appropriate. And so the fact that whoever they have on the design team, they might know, like if a lot of them are young, and no offense, but if all they know is the Marvel Cinematic Universe and what's happened in the last 25 years, they are sorely misinformed on these Marvel characters. That's an alternate version of the Marvel characters. It's not the core truth of the characters. And you need somebody with some genuine comic book history, some genuine comic book knowledge. I don't think they had that on the team. I think they have, like, they went to their developing company, all the employees, and they said, who wants to work on Marvel Spider-Man? And they said, somebody raised their hand and said, oh yeah, I've seen all the movies. And they're like, okay, you're on. And that might be okay for, some cursory surface knowledge. It's not true subject matter expertise. They don't have it. And I can tell you from looking at the cards, they messed it up. They messed it up big time. And so I'm glad it's not coming on Arena, personally. I'm glad that they're going to the cards themselves. If they were not associated with Marvel, some of those might be decent cards to use in the game. So whatever they're going to call it, I don't know. The overall program is called Through the Omen Pass. I don't know that they released the cover name of what they're going to call it. When this is released, it's not called Marvel Spider-Man. It might have Through the Omen Pass at the top, but I think it's going to be each one of these digital-only sets will be under the Through the Omen Pass umbrella, but it's probably each going to have a different name. So I don't know what name is going to replace this, but we're going to get that, and I think that's going to be better for my online game playing experience. And so I think for the majority of us, it's going to be that way. And so that's a pretty good thing overall. I don't know how many other properties they're going to run into this problem is, but for all of the Marvel properties, it's going to be that way. So you're not going to get an X-Men set, and you're not going to get an Avengers set. You're going to get something else. It's going to be called something else. It's going to be whatever's on those X-Men and Avengers cards. It'll be those abilities, but they will have different names. They'll probably have different flavor text, and they will have different card art. I like all of that. I'm good with that. I think overall, I'm not sure if Wizards of the Coast handled it properly. I'm not sure if they've been fully communicative enough that we're. But it would be nice if they would give us more details on the background of this. And I understand maybe they can't because there's a lot of stuff when you're negotiating between one company to another that really needs to be kept internally and be official company business and not be part of the public record. So as much as I'm curious, as much as I think actually a lot of the players might be more understanding if they were able to go into more detail, I'm not sure how much more detail we will ever get. We can ask the questions, I'm not sure what guidance the Wizards of the Coast employees or even Marvel Company employees have been given in terms of what they can comment as to how this particular arrangement came to be and what the actual contract is like. I would love to be able to have like an interview with an official member of the company and be able to ask them some of these questions. But that's the major thing. I wanted to make sure that if you were living under a rock and didn't know, we won't be getting Spider-Man on Arena. It's not the worst thing in the world. It might be better for us. We're still going to get to play with the Magic cards. They'll look more like Magic cards, so it'll be more like a within-universe type of environment and aesthetic, and I like that. You don't need to worry about Sony. Sony can't do squat. They only own the Spider-Man film rights. They don't own any of the digital rights. And I don't believe that Marvel is stopping this because of possible competition with their Marvel Snap online collectible card game, because it's not really Marvel's game. It's called Marvel Snap. It's different companies. They paid a license to use Marvel characters. Marvel, I don't think, has a dog in that fight. Marvel just gets license money. They got their license money. They're fat and happy. They got license money from Marvel Snap. They got license money from Magic the Gathering. They've got license money from everybody. This is the secret to their success. They don't take any of the risk. If Marvel Snap was a miserable failure, they would have sunk millions into it. They didn't risk anything. It was it failed. There are other games that they have. There is other merchandise that hasn't sold. Marvel has not taken a loss on any of that. Marvel has done nothing but profit by accepting a license fee for whatever merchandise or product is out there. All the risk is on the independent company that paid Marvel the franchise fee and then went and produced the product, whether it's sold or not. So don't feel bad for Marvel Comics. Don't feel bad for Disney that owns Marvel. They're making bank no matter what happens. So I really don't believe he's into this discussion really at all. I can't confirm that. I don't have inside baseball. I don't have a mole inside the company, so I can't quote that 100%. But this is based on the knowledge that I have. This is what I think is going on. I think Marvel just wanted too much money, and that maybe their bad experience with Sony in terms of losing Spider-Man film rights in perpetuity soured them on anybody else coming at them with an in perpetuity phrase in the contract. So it might be an absolute veto from Marvel, or they might have been prohibitively high in asking for the money. So with that, let me conclude just to tell you, if you're wondering how I know some of these things, part of my knowledge base comes because I learned to read off comics when I was 5, so I'm a big Marvel and DC fan. I still maintain a collection. I buy new books every week, and I know all about the characters and the history. I'm also a big movie buff. My very first job was at a discount movie theater. I moved up into management. I got a lot of information in terms of movies that were in production, things that were coming down the line, how the how the contracts worked, how the film distribution rights work in terms of which zones in your city get a print of a new movie that comes out, things like that. So I learned a whole bunch about how Hollywood works, how distribution works, that type of stuff. And for a 5-year period while I was working for the discount movie theater and going to college, I was broke, so I could get to see free movies. So I saw like 95% of every movie that came out in that 5-year period. And I still love movies, of course, so I kept going after that. But I mean, I saw nearly every movie that came out 5 years straight in the late 90s. Besides that, of course, I'm a big gamer, so of course I was in at the very ground floor of Magic the Gathering. Not alpha or beta, but as soon as the cards hit Las Vegas, where I live, I played very early on. And then when Arena was just a couple of years old, I got back into Magic and been playing Arena and started this YouTube channel for going on 5 years now. And so I've got a lot of gaming experience in terms of, playing StarCraft and Warcraft and a whole bunch of PC games over the years. When I got my mobile phone, I started getting a lot of the mobile games, which includes like these other Marvel mobile games. I've played those before. They're kind of fun. So I'm a big... I'm sort of like Mark Rosewater in the sense that I'm a big pop culture junkie, right? I've watched a lot of TV, a lot of movies, read a lot of novels, played a lot of video games, played a ton of board games. I'm very big in all of those areas. I do have some gaps, like, like I had to get a college degree, so I don't know a whole lot about Final Fantasy because I didn't spend endless hours playing that game. Okay, but I saw it come out. I had friends that were raving about it, right? But I had a choice on what to do with my. But that's the kind of thing. So I've also got a little bit of experience in buying and selling stocks for some of these entertainment companies. So just for full disclosure, I have owned at different points in time Marvel stock, Disney stock, Netflix, Lionsgate. I still have small shares in Disney and Lionsgate actually, but at various points in times I've sold all of those for a nice tidy profit. It's not like I became a millionaire or anything because we're talking small share amounts, but percentage wise, I was very happy with each sell that I made. So I've got a certain amount of experience also tracking economics in terms of keeping track of company stock charts, their quarterly performances, how they do over time, what their investment strategies are, and stuff like that. So I'm looking at things both from the aspect of a consumer who likes to buy the product and as an investor who's bought stock in their company and paid attention to their quarterly reports and how they fare on Wall Street and that sort of thing. Along these 50 years of my lifetime, I've read history books on these companies, on the history of what's happened. I was reading about the Sony deal as it happened in things like Box Office Magazine, which was actually a hard copy magazine back in the day. So I tell you all these things not to impress you, because if you don't like me, nothing I say would convince you that I was a subject matter expert in any of this regardless. So I'm not trying to persuade you. But there are some people who, or at least if they don't necessarily like me, they're at least willing to listen to me. So I did just want to let you give a little bit of that background to let you know where I come from and what sort of things I've read and studied and experienced, to know that when I talk about like the Sony movie contract, it's stuff that I've actually gotten a chance to read the contract. It's not something that I'm just giving you a rumor or something I heard. This is like I'm giving you the facts. Where I'm speculating, I'll tell you, you've heard when I said I think or I don't believe and that sort of thing. I've caveated those. So hopefully I've communicated properly on here about where I am spouting facts and where I am giving you my speculation. So let's close this out. Most of my posting here on YouTube has been gameplay, but if you enjoyed this talk, please like and subscribe. And let me know in the comments if you would like to see more commentary like this in the future, if this has been educational or informative or entertaining enough that you would like to hear this kind of commentary in the future. And with that, we'll bid you a good night. Have a good one, everybody.